The words hit harder than any punch Officer Brent Harlan could have thrown. "Look at you, crying like some fragile little princess over a jaywalking ticket." The cop sneered, his badge glinting under the Chicago sun as he towered over me on the crowded sidewalk. I stood there frozen, 23 years old, tears already stinging my eyes, while strangers stared and whispered, "My name is Ryan Ellis." And in that single moment, my carefully built life in the city cracked wide open. Liam, my boyfriend of 2 years, squeezed my hand so tight I thought the bones might break. But even his steady presence couldn't stop the shame flooding my chest. I had only been trying to cross the street to grab coffee before my shift at the bookstore. Nothing more, yet this man in uniform had decided my soft features, my slim build, and the quiet way I carried myself made me fair game for public ridicule. He kept going, voice loud enough for the whole block to hear. "Real men don't whimper when they're told to step aside. Go back to whatever safe space you crawled out of, kid." The crowd chuckled nervously. I wanted the pavement to swallow me. Liam stepped forward, jaw tight, but I pulled him back, whispering, "Don't. Please. It's not worth it." The officer smirked, satisfied, and strolled back to his patrol car like he'd just won some invisible battle. I didn't know then that my father, Colonel David Ellis, retired Navy SEAL, and the man whose face had once been on the cover of every major newspaper for leading the daring extraction of hostages in Kandahar, was only 10 minutes away. The cop had no idea whose son he had just broken in front of half of downtown Chicago. Liam drove me home in silence, his hand never leaving mine. Our apartment in Logan Square felt smaller than usual, the afternoon light slanting through the blinds like it was mocking me too. I sank onto the couch, knees drawn up, replaying every word. "Why do I always freeze?" I muttered. Liam knelt in front of me, his dark eyes full of the quiet strength I had fallen in love with the night we met at a poetry reading 2 years ago. "Because you're kind, Ryan. That's not weakness." But kindness hadn't stopped the laughter from strangers or the burn in my throat. I had come out to my family at 19, and Dad had surprised everyone by hugging me tight and saying, "You're still my son." The rest is just details. Yet here I was, 23, feeling like a child again. I called Dad anyway. The phone barely rang before his deep voice answered. "Hey, kiddo. Everything okay?" I tried to sound normal, but the tremor gave me away. Within minutes, he was on his way. The same man who once carried wounded comrades through enemy fire, now rushing across the city because his son had been humiliated for simply existing. Liam made tea we both ignored. The doorbell rang, and there stood Dad, 6'4", still built like the Special Forces legend he was, silver threading his dark hair, but eyes sharp as ever. He took one look at my red-rimmed eyes and pulled me into a bear hug that smelled of aftershave and safety. "Tell me what happened," he said quietly. I spilled everything while Liam sat beside me, adding details when my voice failed. Dad listened without interrupting, but I saw the storm gathering behind his calm. When I finished, he nodded once, the way he did before missions. No one gets to treat my boy like that. Not ever. He didn't storm out for revenge right then. Instead, he stayed, ordering pizza like old times, reminding me I wasn't alone. Yet as night fell and Liam and I lay in bed, his arm around my waist, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. The cop's words echoed every doubt I had ever pushed down about being soft, about loving another man in a world that still sometimes sneered at us. Liam kissed my shoulder. "We'll get through this together." I wanted to believe him, but the crack in my chest felt permanent. The next morning, the bookstore manager pulled me aside before I even clocked in. "Ryan, customers are talking. Someone filmed the whole thing on their phone. It's already online." My stomach dropped. The video was everywhere, titled "Cop School's Weak Kid on Street." Comments ranged from support to mockery. I called Liam in tears again, and he left work early. By lunch, Dad had seen it too. He didn't yell. He simply said, "Time to remind people who the Elises are." I had no idea how far that reminder would take us, or how deeply it would force me to look at the man I was becoming. The video had 500,000 views by evening, and the bookstore let me go until things calmed down. I sat in our apartment staring at the ceiling while Liam cooked pasta we both barely touched. Dad arrived again, this time with a folder of old mission reports he never showed anyone. Not for revenge, he said, setting on a coffee table. For perspective. He told stories I'd only heard in fragments. Nights in the desert where fear was constant, where men leaned on each other in ways civilians never understood. Strength isn't loud, Ryan. It's showing up even when you're scared. His words helped, but they didn't erase the knot in my stomach every time I replayed the cop's sneer. Liam suggested we go for a walk along the lake to clear our heads. The wind off Michigan felt cleansing until a group of guys recognized me from the clip and snickered. One muttered, "There's the princess." Liam's fists clenched, but I pulled him away, heart racing. Back home, the argument we'd been avoiding finally broke. "Why won't you let me defend you?" he demanded, voice cracking for the first time in our relationship. "Because I'm tired of fighting," I snapped back. "Because every time I stand up, I feel like I'm proving them right somehow." The words hung ugly between us. Liam slept on the couch that night, and I stared at the empty side of the bed, wondering if love was supposed to feel this heavy. Dad called at dawn. I found the officer's name. Brent Harlan, 28, on the force 3 years. I made a few calls. He's scheduled for a community meeting next week. "We don't have to go, but I think you should decide." I told him I needed time. Instead, I spent the day writing, pouring the humiliation into my laptop, pages filling with raw honesty about what it meant to be a gay man who sometimes still felt small. Liam read over my shoulder later, eyes softening. "This is powerful, Ree. This is you fighting back." We made love that night for the first time since the incident, slow and careful, like we were both afraid the other might shatter. Afterward, he whispered, "I love the man you are, not the version the world wants." It should have healed something, but the doubt lingered. By midweek, the media had picked up the story. A local news crew wanted an interview. Dad sat beside me on the couch during the call, his presence steady. "Only if you want to," he said. I declined. Instead, I asked Liam to come with me to the community meeting. He agreed, but tension still crackled between us. The night before, Dad pulled me aside. "Your grandfather told me once that real courage is choosing kindness when the world gives you every reason to be cruel. You've always had that, son. Don't let one idiot steal it." I hugged him harder than I had in years. The meeting hall was packed. Officer Harlan stood at the front in dress uniform, looking uncomfortable. When my name was called for public comment, I walked to the mic on legs that felt like water. "I'm Ryan Ellis," I began, voice steadier than I expected. "Last week your officer called me fragile. Weak. Less than a man because I wouldn't fight back." The room went silent. Harlan's face drained of color when Dad stood up behind me, medals glinting under the lights. The cop's eyes widened in recognition. America's most decorated living SEAL was in the room, and he was my father. The unexpected consequence crashed over Harlan like a wave. I watched the realization hit him, and for the first time since the sidewalk, I felt something shift inside me. Not victory, but the beginning of a choice. The room erupted after Dad's quiet introduction. Cameras flashed. Harlan stammered an apology that sounded scripted and hollow. I didn't need it. What I needed was to stop letting other people's words define my worth. Dad and I left together, Liam trailing, his hand brushing mine in silent support. Outside, reporters swarmed. Dad handled them with the calm authority that had once commanded entire platoons. "My son is stronger than most men I've served with," he told them. And that's the end of this story, unless anyone wants to make it longer. They backed off. Back at the apartment, Liam kissed me fiercely the moment the door closed. "You were incredible." For the first time in days, the kiss didn't feel like patching cracks. It felt like building something new. We spent the weekend cocooned, talking about everything we had been avoiding. My fear of being seen as less, his fear of losing me to that fear. He admitted he had been pushing because he was scared too. We promised to do better. Dad texted a single line, "Proud of you, kiddo. Dinner Sunday." I smiled for what felt like the first time in forever. Monday brought a different storm. My former manager called offering my job back with an apology and a raise. I turned it down. Instead, I emailed a literary agent the manuscript pages I had written in the aftermath. By Wednesday, she replied, "This is hard. Let's talk." The validation felt foreign but good. Liam celebrated by taking me to the Art Institute, where we wandered hand in hand among the paintings, no one staring for once. That night, he cooked my favorite risotto, and we danced in the kitchen to old jazz records. The romance I had always craved was finally blooming again, brighter because we had walked through fire. Then the betrayal came. My closest friend, Marcus, the one who had introduced Liam and me, posted on social media. Ryan's playing the victim card. I saw the video. He's always been dramatic. The comments exploded with fresh cruelty. I stared at the screen, chest hollow. Marcus had been the first person I came out to in college. He had sworn he had my back. Liam found me crying in the bathroom and held me until the shaking stopped. He doesn't get to rewrite your story, he said. Dad drove over immediately, took one look at the post, and made a call. Within an hour, Marcus's account was flooded with messages from veterans and allies. But the damage was done. The doubt crept back in. Was I dramatic? Was I using my identity as a shield? Dad stayed late, sharing something he had never told me. During his last tour, he had lost a soldier, a man everyone knew was gay but no one spoke about. I sat with him the night before the mission, Dad said quietly. He was scared, same as the rest of us. I told him fear doesn't make you weak, quitting does. He didn't quit. The story cracked something open in me. I realized I had been quitting on myself every time I shrank from confrontation. Liam listened from the doorway, eyes glistening. When Dad left, Liam pulled me close. You're not quitting anymore. Not on us. Not on you. We made love with a tenderness that felt like a vow. The next morning, I blocked Marcus and opened a new document titled Simply Stronger. The literary agent called while I was still in my pajamas. We have interest from 2 publishers. They want the full manuscript in 6 weeks. 6 weeks. The timeline felt both terrifying and perfect. I spent the next days writing like the words were saving me, which maybe they were. Liam came home each evening with flowers or takeout, reading pages over my shoulder and offering gentle notes. Our relationship deepened in the quiet rhythm of creation and support. One night, he surprised me with tickets to a gay author panel downtown. Sitting beside him in the audience, listening to men talk openly about love and identity, I felt seen in a way the cop's words had tried to erase. Dad invited us to his house in the suburbs for Sunday dinner. The backyard grill smelled like summer, even though it was October. He introduced Liam properly this time, not as Ryan's friend, but as the man who stand beside my son. The 3 of us talked for hours. Dad asked Liam about his work, about his dreams, and listened like the answers mattered. Later, when Liam stepped inside for more drinks, Dad turned to me. He's good for you. Don't let fear steal that. I nodded, throat tight. For the first time, the 3 most important men in my life felt aligned. The cop, Officer Harlan, reached out through mutual contact. He wanted to meet. Dad advised caution, but left the choice to me. I agreed, but only with Liam and Dad present. We met at a quiet coffee shop near the lake. Harlan looked smaller out of uniform, eyes haunted. I was wrong, he said simply. I grew up hearing things I never questioned. Seeing your father, seeing you stand up, it made me look at myself. He didn't ask for forgiveness, just understanding. I didn't give him either, not fully. Instead, I said, words have weight. Use yours better. We left without hugs or handshakes, but the meeting closed a chapter one hadn't realized was still open. That same week, my manuscript reached the agent. She called it raw and necessary. Offers came in. I chose the publisher who promised to keep my voice intact. The advance wasn't huge, but it was enough to quit worrying about rent. Liam and I celebrated with a weekend trip to a cabin up north. No phones, just us, the woods, and long talks about the future. He admitted he had been considering proposing before the incident, but had been waiting for the right moment. I laughed through happy tears. This feels like the right moment. We didn't rush. We simply let the possibilities settle between us like a promise. Back in the city, the book deal made local news. Suddenly, I was the young gay author who stood up to prejudice. Strangers messaged me stories of their own experiences. Some nights the weight felt heavy, but Liam was there, steady and sure. Dad sent a care package of my favorite childhood snacks with a note. You're writing the story now. Keep going. I did. The words flowed easier, each chapter a step farther from the boy who had cried on that sidewalk. Publication day arrived in a blur of interviews and book signings. The bookstore that had once fired me hosted the launch event. I stood at the podium reading the opening lines I had written in the rawest days after the incident. When I looked up, Liam was in the front row beside Dad, both men beaming with pride that had nothing to do with medals or book sales. Afterward, a young gay teenager approached me shyly. "You made me feel less alone," he said. In that moment, every tear, every doubt, every sacrifice felt worth it. Liam proposed 3 weeks later on the same lakefront path where we had walked after the betrayal post. He knelt under the autumn trees, rings simple and perfect. "I want to build a life where no one can make you feel small again," he said. I said yes before he finished the sentence. Dad threw us an engagement party at his house, inviting old SEAL buddies and our chosen family. Watching Liam laugh with men who had once charged in a battle, I realized strength came in many forms, including the quiet courage of choosing love every single day. The book hit the bestseller list in the LGBTQ category. Reviews praised its honesty. One critic wrote, "Ellis doesn't just tell a gay story, he lives it on the page." I started speaking at colleges and community centers, sharing the journey from sidewalk humiliation to published author. Each talk felt like another layer of armor I no longer needed, because I finally trusted my own skin. Liam traveled with me when he could, holding my hand backstage. Our love had been tested and had emerged stronger, more honest, more ours. Dad's health scare came without warning. A routine checkup revealed an old injury flaring up. For 2 weeks, he was in and out of the hospital while Liam and I took turns staying with him. In the quiet hours, he told me more stories, this time about the friends he had lost and the ones he had saved. I was scared every single time he confessed, but I kept going because someone needed me too. His vulnerability mirrored my own in ways I had never expected. When he was discharged, I hugged him longer than usual. "You're still my hero," I whispered. He chuckled. "You're mine too, kiddo." The final chapter of my book was still unwritten. I saved it for the day Liam and I signed the lease on a bigger apartment with a room for a writing desk overlooking the lake. That night, I typed the last line and closed the laptop. The journey from the cop's cruel words to this moment of peace had been longer and harder than any mission, but I had walked it with the 2 men who mattered most. I sent the finished manuscript to my editor and fell asleep in Liam's arms, finally at rest inside my own story. The launch party for the paperback edition filled a downtown gallery with friends, readers, and family. Dad stood tall in a crisp shirt, medals left at home because tonight wasn't about his past. Liam never left my side, his thumb tracing circles on my palm the way he always did when I got nervous. When it was time for my speech, I kept it short. "Thank you for letting me tell my story. But the real story is still being written. Every day, I choose to love openly and live honestly." The applause felt warm, not like the stairs on that sidewalk months ago. Later, Dad pulled Liam and me aside near the dessert table. "I've been thinking about retirement for real this time," he said. "Maybe travel, maybe write my own book." His smile was softer than I had ever seen. "You too inspired me." The 3 of us stood together, a family forged through fire and grace. Outside the gallery, the Chicago night sparkled with city lights. Liam and I walked home slowly, fingers laced, talking about wedding plans and future chapters. Months later, we stood on the lakefront again, this time for our small wedding. Dad walked me down the aisle of folded chairs, whispering, "You've always been strong enough." Liam waited under a simple arch, eyes shining. When we exchanged vows, the words came easy because we had already lived them through every hard day. The kiss that sealed our marriage tasted like sunlight and second chances. Dad's health stabilized, and he started a veteran support group that included space for LGBTQ service members. My second book was already under contract, this one about chosen family and quiet courage. Liam got a promotion that let him work remotely so we could travel together on book tours. Life didn't become perfect, prejudice still existed, but we faced it together, unafraid. On the first anniversary of the incident, we returned to the exact sidewalk where it had happened. The city had changed. New shops, new faces. I stood in the same spot and felt nothing but gratitude. Liam kissed my temple. Look how far we've come. Dad met us later for dinner, raising a glass. To the men who choose kindness when the world doesn't. We clinked glasses, 3 generations of strength, wrapped in different kinds of armor. The story wasn't over, but the boy who had cried on that sidewalk had grown into a man who no longer needed anyone's permission to take up space. I still wrote every day. I still held Liam every night. And I still call my father every Sunday. The journey had taught me that real power wasn't in never falling. It was in rising every single time, hand in hand with the people who saw your truth and loved you anyway. Is hiding who you are ever worth the peace it brings? True or false?